Ramiz, thank you for your patience. Thank you for doing this briefing. If I could ask the colleagues to put Ramiz on the screen, and we will give you the floor.
Oh. Thank you very much. Am I audible?
Yes, perfectly. We can, perfectly. Now we see you. Go ahead, Ramiz. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stefan, and thank you very much, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Happy to brief you again, as we do periodically, unfortunately not on a happy occasion. As you all know, today we had, since yesterday, these developments, very unfortunate developments. The de facto authorities of Afghanistan, with immediate effects, have advised us that no Afghan woman is permitted to work for the United Nations in Afghanistan, and that this measure will be actively enforced. Some of our national colleagues, as you might have heard from previous statements and interventions made, already experienced restrictions on their movements or harassment of a sort. And we, as United Nations, condemn this in the strongest terms, this prohibition of Afghan women working for us. The decision has a profound effect, of course, on various aspects, and you might have heard some of the colleagues who intervened earlier today on social media or in various media sources. I've been already giving interviews as well. But first of all, it comes on the heels of what had happened on 24th December. And I was in that room briefing you. At that time, the ban was put on the NGOs, who have done a tremendous work, really, in trying to keep the response going, trying to find the ways of working with women, for women, and reaching out. And I take my hat off for what they've been doing. And what to say? This is another step into the same direction. It's a new escalation, if you wish, of the actions which have taken already a cruel and I would say a devastating blow against Afghan women, which will further undermine our collective ability of the entire community to support the population, and which is experiencing unprecedented humanitarian crisis. And that crisis is largely centered around women and girls who are the most vulnerable, and they're all taking sides. We all have seen what's been happening, right? For the last 20 months, the de facto authorities, the Taliban, have issued a series of increasingly restrictive measures targeting women and girls, and all of this sought only one purpose: to limit their participation in all aspects of social, economic, and political life. Now, this new development, this is just an unparalleled violation of human women's rights, a flagrant breach of the humanitarian principles and international rules and privileges on the immunities of the United Nations, which is extended normally to all United Nations personnel. And that includes fundamental freedom for all without discrimination to gender, race, religion, language. We have advised in our meetings with de facto authorities. I have held meetings with them. SRSG Otunbayeva issued a statement. She had a meeting with the de facto Minister of Foreign Affairs Mataki today on these matters, that both Afghan women and men are absolutely essential to all aspects of the UN's work in Afghanistan. And we will continue to take all possible measures to support our national staff in this particularly difficult time, and that includes both female and male staff. So what we have taken the steps now is that we will continue to engage with the de facto authorities, and we also continue to seek the clarity on this ban and whatever it implicates for us. We will have to, this is an unparalleled situation, unprecedented situation. It has never been experienced in any other place. So don't expect me to answer every question today with the level of the precision and the decimal point of what the impact of this will be. The impact is bad. I can tell you that from now. Without our female staff, we can't engage properly, we can't deliver programs. And let me just give you a few figures. We are talking about the world's largest humanitarian response planned this year, reaching and targeting 23 million people. And honestly speaking, our appeal for $4.6 billion this year has raised only 215 million. So that would tell you the gap of how much we actually need and how much we actually were able to raise. Because international community, unfortunately, doesn't have the resources to support. It's very difficult for donors to convince their parliaments and constituencies to contribute. So the contributions are at the lowest point. That's number one. Second is that despite of all what had happened after the 24th December ban, and it was initially introduced, our teams, NGOs, UN, together, we were able to deliver life-saving assistance to millions of people. And that includes food assistance to over 11 million people, 11.5 million people, in fact. Emergency agricultural seasonal sensitive assistance is being delivered to 4.5 million people. Health services, again, to 2.5 million. Safe and clean water to 1 million. Education to nearly 500,000. Now, all this is being put in jeopardy by these decisions. And unfortunately, we are in this situation. So, as I said, we're standing at this particular juncture with a very strong condemnation of this decision, which violates women's rights, which violates human rights, which violates the principles on which we operate, and on top of it, which undermines our ongoing response to support the people in need. I will say that much, and we really hope that this will be taken away. We will communicate with member states, so we continue to communicate with health authorities. It's a clear duty to eliminate discriminatory measures against women, as is indicated under Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, CEDAW, and as also mandated by the UN Security Council Resolution 2626. So this is where we are, and I'm happy to take any questions, and unfortunately on this, as I said, not such a happy occasion.
Thank you very much. Edie, please.
Thank you very much on behalf of the United Nations Correspondents Association for doing this briefing. I'm Edith Lederer from the Associated Press. Two questions. First, in meetings today, who did you meet with from the Taliban authorities, and do you believe that this is a decision supported by all of the Taliban officials? And secondly, is there any way of delivering aid to women without women aid workers? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for these questions. And first of all, today the meetings were held with the de facto foreign minister of the current Taliban-led de facto administration of Afghanistan, who has shared with us, the United Nations, that this is, let's say, verbal clarifications provided by the Supreme Leader's Office, that it has to be enforced now on the UN. Whether all Taliban, part of Taliban, which fraction of Taliban supports or does not support this decision, I will not be commenting on this. For one single reason, that we've been given this as the policy of this de facto administration, and any member of this de facto administration which executes or introduces this policy is, by default, is supporting it. So, therefore, we are asking all of the members of the de facto authorities to collectively repeal this completely unacceptable ban, and this is where it is, from our perspective. Your second question was whether it is possible to reach women without women, and the answer to this clearly no. It is not possible to reach women without women, and without women they will not be reached. And that's the unfortunate reality. I hope I answered your question.
Okay, Michelle, please.
Thank you, Ramiz. Michelle Nichols with Reuters. Couple of quick questions. When will all Afghan men and women are currently staying at home, when do you expect the Afghan men working for the UN to return to work or return to the office or wherever they may actually physically work? And you said that the Foreign Minister shared verbal clarifications from the Supreme Leader's office. How, you know, we've been hearing here that there's nothing in writing. So how did this come from Kandahar to Kabul and then to the UN? Like, how was that delivered, if you get my gist? And how concerned are you that, you know, what does this mean for donors and funding? And you've alluded to it there, but, you know, what have you heard from donors yet on what they might be planning to do now? Thank you.
Thank you very much. First of all, it was exactly communicated in the same way as communicated verbally. And they have told us that there will be no additional order issued because the order is already issued. It was issued in December, and now it is being expanded to UN. So that's as simple as that, and there is no any further clarification. Now, which particular mean of transmission of the message was utilized to do so is not known to me, but I have met with an official of the de facto authority who has convened this first to me, and then, of course, obviously, the de facto foreign minister communicated that. So I don't think there is any ambiguity about what's going on. And this ban is being actively enforced, as I issued yesterday on my Twitter, and in our means, you know, in Nandahar, they were actively interfering, and we had and advising, and now we had also the cases where in Kabul and other places, our female staff were harassed, not allowed otherwise to go. So this is now being actively enforced, right? So very clear. When it comes to the second part of your question, which was related to, can you remind me, please? I didn't take a good note. That was related to when we can expect what's going to happen.
Yeah, when will the Afghan men come back to work?
Okay. Afghan UN national staff, Afghan men and women are in solidarity. So we'll not have a situation when we are working with all male teams. So our national staff have not reported to the office together. Not that we ask women stay at home and men come here and stuff like that. No. And that is an important element here. This is not against females only. This is, in fact, disables both men and women to work together to deliver on life-saving, important work of UN in Afghanistan. And they will report back to the office at the time when we can provide adequate, normal conditions for them to be able to work in the office and come to the office and go from the office without any intimidation, harassment, or any sort of interference. You ask me when it's going to happen, I wish it happens tomorrow, but tomorrow it will not happen. And I'm not sure it's going to happen on Sunday or on Monday, but it will happen. And we will work for that.
James, please go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to clarify. So if all UN staff, all 3,300, I think it was, something like that, 900, 800, will stay home until the women can come back to work as well?
Absolutely. For now, that's the posture. We are in intensive communication with the de facto authorities. And here, the issue here is, and I want to be very clear, that no compromises could be made between the principles of our engagement, between the fact that we are, as a normative body, as a United Nations, the issues of women's participation, gender equality, will not be put, as I said in the very same briefings before, will not be put into a conflict with our humanitarian imperative and will not be put in conflict with our responsibility to help people of Afghanistan. So we will work in those places where we can work, and where we can deliver according to our principles. If we cannot deliver, it is not because that we don't want to deliver or we would like to condition. It's because we've been put by the de facto authorities in a condition where we cannot deliver. And all what we're asking for is that the condition, normal condition, for the conducive delivery of humanitarian and basic human needs is restored. I hope I'm very clear about that.
Thank you, James.
So
Please.
if our women, if our women can go and deliver the assistance in the camps and they can provide support to the beneficiaries, it will go ahead. If they can't, it will not go ahead. As simple as that.
Thank you very much, James.
Ramiz, it's James Bays from Al Jazeera. Good to see you again. I want to be absolutely clear on this. You're saying for now, and I'm asking slightly about the for now, but neither men or women, Afghan men or women, are going to report to work, and you support that decision, and you say they will only operate where men and women can operate. Well, my understanding is this ruling is throughout Afghanistan. The Taliban are saying it's throughout the country. So that means that you are not going to have any of your Afghan staff working for now. Is that going to bring an end to all of your operations across Afghanistan? And will you revise this policy at some point in the future and say, yes, just the men can work? And the last part of the question, what happens to the salaries of these people? Are they still going to be paid, including the women, even if the women ban goes on for a long time?
Number one, I will start from the last part of your question, James. And indeed, good to see you again. And I hope you will come and visit us again, as you have done in the past. First of all, everybody will be paid. Okay? We will not add an insult to an injury. It's enough that those women who have been put in this condition and who are really strong, and I really applaud their spirit, the spirit of my staff. They are strong women. They know what is living and working in Afghanistan is, and they are definitely not the victims. They're agents of change. They're the frontline workers. They're the people who go out and help. They know how to stand and to continue to deliver against all the adversities towards the people. So my chapeau to all of them. Yeah, and thank you for your solidarity with them. So first of all, they all will be paid. Second, we indeed will not ask for the return of our female staff to the office until we have assurances that they can come, they can work here, and they can go home without harassment and without any intimidation. And we will not ask our female staff to stay at home and call male staff to the office so that we go with the male-only teams or whatever the definition is. Now, will we revise this policy in some way or format, depending on what sort of exceptions or what sort of operational environment we will negotiate? Probably yes, but in no condition and in no time, it will be a situation then we are male-only. Okay, so let's give you a very practical example. I can deliver, I can send mobile health teams to a camp where both my female and male staff can go and participate and provide assistance. I will do so.
Thank you very much. Your question, please.
Thank you. Thank you for the briefing. It's Pamela Falk from CBS News. Following up on the previous, can you hear? Yes? Following up on the previous questions, what do you think will happen if this impasse, no work, no change, takes a few weeks or months or isn't resolved? What are the implications for aid delivery for Afghanistan? You mentioned a few, but how do you see it? And as a side question, what do you think provoked this? You're there, you speak to them every day. I mean, internal, whatever you think, what do you think provoked it? Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I will try to link also to the past question because I think I skipped an answer to it. What will happen is that there is, first of all, I already indicated that the funding is very slim. And that means that assistance will not reach the people. In a country where you have multitude of communicable diseases, where you have serious water quality issues, where you have a considerable level of malnutrition, the combination of these factors is mortal for the people of Afghanistan. I will not speculate about what will happen in terms of numbers, but the lives of thousands and thousands of people are at stake. That's what is at stake, specifically of children, specifically of mothers, specifically of people living in rural areas, in remote areas who have no access to much services where we provide those services. So that's what's at stake, right? Scale of the response is at stake. Our ability to revitalize agricultural production, our ability to create what we've planned, let's say water drainage system, you've seen the floods, you've seen our problems in the region. All of this work will be done. So there is nothing good coming out of it for the people of Afghanistan, economically, from the humanitarian perspective, from food security perspective. It all means bad news. So I hope I answered that part of the question. The second part of the question related to, remind me please.
Why?
It was why they have done that.
Yeah.
Okay, I do believe that there is a need to engage with Taliban more intensively. Engaging does not mean recognition. Engaging does not mean recognizing someone, but having a dialogue. And that dialogue, which so far has been led only by the United Nations, is not enough if it's only United Nations on the ground having that dialogue. We need to engage more. And I do believe part of this reason probably is the fact that they continue to be extremely dissatisfied with non-engagement on one hand. On another hand, I do believe that there is a sufficient amount of Taliban constituency or de facto authorities who are very conservative in their worldviews. And that is the reflection of what society they would like to build and what type of the world they would like to live in. The fact that we as international community or the entire Muslim world is living in a different dimension, that we do not accept this interpretation of Sharia, let's say, and so far it's a different story. But this is what the value systems which are being promoted by the current de facto authorities. Whether they all supported or they partially supported is a secondary question. The fact is that the administration, this de facto administration, promotes its sets of values.
Thank you.
Thank you very Ibtisam, please.
Thank you. Thank you. My name is Ibtisam Azim, Al Arabi Al Jadid newspaper. I have just first a quick follow-up on the issue of why now and your answer regarding engagement. When you talk about engagement and them wanting to, what do you believe they want to have? When you talk, I mean, they, what exactly they want to see from your talks with them, and whether you were you surprised by their announcement? And just to, in the context of engagement, do you believe that the engagement that some Muslim countries are having with them having a positive effect? You want to see more engagement or more pressure there on the Taliban, or if you could say more to that. And just one thing to clarify. So your international staff are still working and allowed to work, including women. Are they providing aid? Is there any aid that you are providing now? Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Let me again start from the end. This ban does not apply to the international female staff. They continue to work just as our international staff, and they are able to move freely and to provide aid. I hope that answered this part of the question. When it comes to the elements of the pressure which you have mentioned, I haven't seen pressure working well, and I have spoke about that in my previous interventions from in this audience, I do believe that the dialogue is important. The Taliban actually is a movement which has been pressurized quite significantly for a long period of time, and they don't respond well to the pressure. Dialogue, yes. Dialogue with Muslim ulama, yes. The Organization of Islamic Conference member states is extremely important because it creates a platform and a place where we all, as representatives of the Ummah, have an ability to share how this is being handled in other countries when it comes to women's work, when it comes to education, when it comes to social participation, and so forth. Now, these Ulama Council visits which we have had, they're, I believe, important. At least they have created some traction. They are particularly interested in listening to the interpretation of the Dubendi school of thought, if you wish, Hanafi Dubendi school of thought, and that's the one which brings probably most traction in these discussions. We, however, have not seen any end result. When it comes to the engagement and the political processes, it is important for us to understand that 40 million people which are living in Afghanistan highly depend on support from outside. The grievances which the Taliban has are spelled in every meeting. They give you 12 points, and it starts with all the elements which are usually, you meet any Taliban official, they give you 12 points. There's non-recognition, assets, and so on and so on and so on. Those elements are not in the hands of the United Nations or humanitarian workers or the NGOs who are on the ground. This belongs to intergovernmental processes, this belongs to a totally different dimension. But because we're the only actors who are on the ground and they're the only face of the international community, we're on the taking side of it all. And that's why we have asked the member states, we have asked ulama, we have asked Islamic countries, please engage with Taliban. Engagement is not recognition. Please speak to them. Please explain to them what is happening and why it is not happening. So you don't only hear it from the United Nations, but you hear it from the entire world.
Thank you very
I
much.
hope I answered your question.
Thank you very much. We're going to just take one question online, and then we will return to the room. Iftikhar, you have a question, please? Iftikhar?
Thank you very much. This is Iftikhar Ali from Associated Press of Pakistan. Sir, with the situation deteriorating constantly and your operations almost crippled, do you think it's worth working in Afghanistan under such conditions?
Iftikhar Bhai, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. And you asked a very good question. I'll give you an answer from my heart. Even if we will save the life of one child, even if we will build one house, even if we will change the life of one person, it is worth it. Because the people of Afghanistan cannot be abandoned. It's a 40 million people. And they need to be a part of the world. And they want to be a part of the world. They want to be a part of international community. These are amazing people, God-loving people. They are very hardworking. And in every place, in every village I have visited, for 3 years I've been here, I have seen nothing but a deep appreciation. Nothing but a deep appreciation of the assistance we provided. For tens of thousands of houses we built in the earthquake zone, for the food we have given, for the assistance we have given to the children. That is priceless, and that gives Afghan people hope. Because if we leave, they'll have much less hope. And the hope is very important for them. The solidarity in the world is very important for them. And that is worth everything. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you very much. Maggie, and then Edie, please.
Hi, Ramiz. It's Margaret Bashir from Voice of America. I'm just wondering what the reaction has been from your staff and if the media in Afghanistan is covering this, if they're able to cover it, and how you mentioned harassment and such of women and interference with them going to work. Could you just be a little more detailed about that, if that's possible? Thank you.
Afghan people are the most resilient people I have met in my 30 years career with the United Nations. And they have endured much of difficulty through the decades of war and deprivation. So this situation is difficult for Afghan national staff, but they're strong and they're resilient, and we're talking to them. And as again, I'm very respectful of them. They're the backbone of our response. Without them, we will not be able to do what we have done so far, including preventing this country from famine last year and supporting every aspect of health delivery or delivery of essential services. We're in full solidarity with us, both male and female staff, they are all together. We will work together to resolve these problems. Of course, they're not particularly pleased, but I do believe we all have seen the direction to which it is going. So therefore, we will develop together plans of how we will carry our essential work forward together. Now, you have asked us, a part of your question was related, please remind me, maybe
Is the media in Afghanistan covering this development? Are they able to?
Yes, they are. Of course, I've just given an interview to the Afghan TV. I'm speaking to the press. Of course, freedom of press also have suffered in the last 20 months. A number of outlets have closed down, some of them not necessarily for the restrictions, but just for purely economical reasons, and because of the whole downstream situation in the media sector. Media of Afghanistan historically was always independent. It never depended on aid. It actually lived off taxation of the money they made from advertisement and commercial activities. Since that activity has gone down, they have collected so much less. But there's still quite a vibrant of social media and televised and printed press in the country. We're talking to them. And they follow actively toward what is happening here on the ground. So all in all, I do believe this is an unfortunate situation, but there is nothing to hide. Our operations of UN is public. Everybody knows what's going on. I always speak very openly here or in our places about the issues we face, and all what we ask from the de facto authorities and from every constituency is let us do our work. Please give us the necessary space to deliver according to our standards. And these standards are not different for Afghanistan. We're not asking from Afghanistan something what we are not asking from any other place in the world. A very simple series of things we're asking. That please let us work and be able to work in a way so that we can assist both women and men.
Thank you, Edith.
It's a very simple aspect. Thank you.
Thank you, Ramiz. It's Edith Lederer from the AP again. Two follow-up questions. You said that the international staff can move around and are providing aid. How much can they provide compared to what you were doing before? And secondly, was Special Representative Rosa Otunbayeva at the meeting with the foreign minister today also?
Thank you very much. Special Representative of Secretary General Otunbayeva has led UN delegation into the meeting with the de facto Foreign Minister Mutaki, and was the key person to conduct these discussions. And following that, she just issued a statement to which I would like to attract your attention. It actually is posted on the UNAMA website and clearly indicates the elements of the discussion which have taken place and her reactions to this particular situation. The other elements which you have emphasized in your question with regard to what is what is happening next, or how this is going to be implemented from our side, and what is the impact of what has happened. Too early to quantify because it's been 24 hours. So if you want me to give you a figure how much the international staff will be able to do about national staff, we can put it in a proportion. International staffing in the country is maybe 20% of the or less of the entire staffing. So if you want to extrapolate immediately from one to another, that would give you a proportion of what potential impact could be. But that mathematical formula does not necessarily stand exactly in the same equation. And again, I would like to mention NGOs. They've been on the taking side. They've been on the forefront of the response. And many of them have now found the modalities working depending on those specific conditions that we're able to negotiate in various provinces. Yeah? So that part of response will go. What we have an extremely strong monitoring system of what's being delivered. This is the only humanitarian response in the world which is monitored at the district level. Just because of the level of sensitivity and scrutiny which is being given to that operation. So we will produce this report. I cannot give you exact figure, but there will be a considerable effect and reduction. That's what I can tell you after 24 hours of what that happened.
Please go ahead at the back.
Thank you so much for your briefing today. This is Mariam Ramati, Afghanistan International TV. I have a follow-up regarding what you said about engagement with the Taliban. As you said, the international community has asked the Taliban to reverse all these restrictions against women so they can start engaging with the Taliban. When you're meeting with the Taliban, do you actually deliver this message? Maybe you need to change your behavior so the international community can trust you, or as you know, there has been a lot of engagement happening in the past few years, several engagement meetings with the Taliban in Doha, and all the Taliban did false promises, empty promises. So it is a little bit hard to hear from the Taliban, yeah, we want engagement, but we are going to make promises, but the promises are going to be empty, and we are going to go back in Afghanistan, and we are going to just say, yeah, we are not going to do that. So that's one question. I want to hear more from you if you're actually telling the Taliban that message of the international community. And the other question is, what step is your office taking to support its female Afghan workers during this difficult time? As you said, they are going through a rough time currently. Is there any special steps that you're taking to actually help them emotionally and in any other way? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. First of all, the only thing which we all do collectively is to tell Taliban exactly what you have asked us, whether we're telling them or not. And because we are the only presence of international community in Afghanistan with very few embassies, I believe that may be one of the results of us telling them this on a daily basis. So in a way, we are on the receiving side. Every day when we meet with Taliban, we give them that messages. Not only we give them that messages, we also make them public. You will find on the record of all these messages and statements on every aspect of what really concerns international community on UNAMA Twitter account, on @UN Afghanistan Twitter account, and OCHA Afghanistan Twitter account. Very public, and happens on a daily basis. Most of the time, it happens every day, several times. So, the problem is that then you decide to stay behind and deliver in the country, you take a blame for an offense you have not made. Because the wounds of Afghan society, the grief of Afghan society, the feelings which the people have are so strong. And the issue of engagement does not mean promise, it does not mean action, it means a discussion. It would be very good if these messages which UN is transmitting on a daily basis, and sometimes several times a day, to the de facto authorities would not only be transmitted by the UN, but also by the member states intergovernmental organizations, and other partners. And that's what is missing, and that's what I mean under the engagement. I hope I clarified your question.
I think there was a second part of the question too.
Yes, about the support that you're giving your employees.
Sure, our employees are benefiting from the full package of support which UN provides in that condition. That includes psychosocial support, that includes counseling, that includes availability of connectivity, that includes ability to telecommute, and many other elements. I will not describe them all in this particular press conference. Everything, including solar power, provision of electricity, and many other benefits. Afghan staff in general are our priority number one in every aspect of it.
Thank you. Please.
This is Arun Lewis from IANS. This is a question on a different topic. The food security situation in Afghanistan has always been tenuous, and it's probably made worse by the current world situation. Are you reaching out to other countries in the region, such as India, for providing more food aid or more supply of wheat? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think this is a very important question which you have raised. So since you asked about the food insecurity, in general in Afghanistan, 20 million people are experiencing food insecurity of various levels, some of them as bad as IPC4. Overall, the initial plan for 2023, specifically since you're referring to food and meat, I presume, asking questions specifically to India, and India has been a very important partner in providing aid to Afghanistan. I've given a number of food donations, at least in 2022. I was personally involved in a number of those cases. So when it comes to the overall, the shortfall, the initial plan for 2023 was for 820 kmts of wheat flour, and the gap right now stands at 333 kmt. And we are in touch with all regional partners. Most of the wheat which Afghanistan consumes today is the wheat of Ukrainian origin. That's the one which is being procured, followed by the wheat coming from Kazakhstan. But an important supply of wheat has always been coming from India as well. So we definitely are in touch with the authorities there, and we've been benefiting from donations in 2022, and definitely hope that the people of Afghanistan will continue to benefit from this donation in 2023. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you. We have time for one more question, please, Stefan.
Thank you, Stefano Vaccaro, La Voce di New York. Did you have a question about when you talk with the Taliban? Do you refer to the resolution 2593 by the Security Council that it didn't happen 30 or 40 years ago? It happened in August 2021, especially the point 3 and 4, what they actually mention about how they too allowed UN to provide help, humanitarian help, and the point 4 reaffirms the importance of upholding human rights, including those of women. So do you refer to that? Because I mean, Security Council resolution should be binding.
Thank you very much. This is a very good point you have made. Of course, we refer to UN Security Council resolutions and other documents, exemptions which have been given. The Taliban considers themselves unrecognized. And every time then you bring these points to their attention, first of all, they have a different interpretation of the events or interferences. Sometimes it is related to the fact that you have your interlocutors, and depends whom you're talking to. You know, you may have interlocutors who are aware of international law and norms and principles, and you may have those interlocutors far less aware of those norms and principles. But overall, it is very difficult to hold accountable any authority which has come to power through unconstitutional means to the international norms and standards because they don't consider themselves signatory to it. So we do mention it to them on all bases and at all times. And not only those elements, but also international conventions and norms to which Afghanistan is a signatory as a member state of the United Nations. They may not have a seat right now at the United Nations. They may not have an ambassador. They may not have all of those elements, but Afghanistan is a recognized member state with which is signatory to a considerable amount of various international conventions and norms and standards which apply to a wide range of norms. But holding someone who has come there unconstitutionally and who is unrecognized to this is quite a complex task. So it's not necessarily what you say, it's the whole construct of the relationship which is complex. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, you did, but I have a quick follow-up. We had a press conference, I believe a couple of months ago, actually it was in January, by Deputy Secretary Mohammed Amina here, after she came back from Afghanistan. In that press conference, referring to the same Security Council resolution, and she was practically describing a situation very similar, but the women of the UN mission could still work at that time, and she was she was telling us that she didn't know what will happen next. Now, what happened next? I mean, the situation now is worse, right? So at that time, I asked her if when for the UN will arrive the time to tell the women from Afghanistan to leave the country, because the resolution of the Security Council, noting the situation that will probably come with the Taliban, says, and this is the point 5, that the Taliban had to allow anyone that wants to leave the country to leave. And when I asked to the US ambassador, what are you going to do with these people that, let's say, want to leave Afghanistan? The US ambassador, at that time of the resolution, say we will be welcoming them. Well, I would like to know what you think about this, and if it's the time for you telling the women of Afghanistan to leave, maybe.
Thank you so much. Please ask that question from the member states. And what I can tell you from you as the United Nations is that we will stay in Afghanistan. We will work with Afghan women and men for the well-being of Afghan women. And Afghanistan will always prevail. And the Afghan people will always prevail. And the future will be the people of Afghanistan. And Afghan women and men will one day have happy, normal life. And the duty of the United Nations is not to take people outside of the country and do other things, but to make sure that they can live happy, prosperous life where they can fulfill their potential inside their home, in their homeland, where they have been born and they have been raised. And that is a duty of the United Nations to help them to realize their full potential and to build that prosperous future. And we will do it together. It is a very difficult moment right now, but this is not the time to abandon. And the other part of your question, which you have asked, I do believe is slightly rhetoric in some of the elements of it. I really appreciate the sentiment. I know you try to convey how difficult it is for women. I share it, but I do believe we have to address this issue in Afghanistan with the people of Afghanistan through the political dialogue, through the engagement, and make sure that they provided the way. I hope I answered the question.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank our guest today, Mr. Alakbarov. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. much, Daniela. Thank you, everybody. Have a nice rest of the day.